So today we're doing the snow. We'll get started by hitting Shift C to move this 3D cursor into the center. And hit Shift A. Oops. Shift A. Add a grid, which is just a plane that comes pre-subdivided. We'll increase the size, maybe about 50 meters or so. We'll maybe add 100 subdivisions each on the X and Y axis. That looks like it'll probably be good. And I'll maybe bring it down just a little bit, something like that maybe. We'll add a new displace modifier. And then we'll hit new. We'll call this texture low frequency, since we're going to have two displacements. If I hit this little guy right here, it'll bring us to the texture tab automatically. I'll change the type to clouds. I'll hit shade smooth, and I actually don't have enough topology, so I'll just add a subdivision surface. Bring that up to the top using this little guy to drag and drop. And then I'll go back to the texture tab and I'll increase the size of this. Now, right now, the size doesn't go above 2 when I just slide, so I'll have to manually type in maybe 5. Maybe even a little bit more, like 6 or something. And we can just go to the modifiers tab and adjust the strength, maybe a little bit higher for this low frequency detail. Then we can hit Shift D to duplicate that. Hit this little 2 guy here to duplicate the low frequency texture, and we can call this one high freak. And then we'll go to the texture tab again. And maybe I'll set this to like 1 or something. Now, obviously, this is way too strong, so I'll just lower the strength to maybe like 0.2. So now we have some bigger details and some smaller details in our snow. Next, we can go to the shading tab, and we'll actually add the snow texture. So we'll go and call it snow. And I'll hit Control Space to make this bigger. If you select the principled BSDF and with Node Wrangler enabled, hit Control Shift T. And then once you find your textures, go and select the first one, Shift select the last one, and hit Principled Texture Set. And it should automatically set things up for you. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this little node here and then delete this, since I'm just going to do the mapping with the UV editor, since I'll use this in multiple places. And after hitting Control Space, it'll get smaller and you can see the texture. I'm maybe going to add a little bit of subsurface, maybe like around 0.2-ish, and make it a little light bluish color, which should look nice. We'll go to the UV editing tab, and I'm going to scale this, select all with A, and scale this all up to increase the tiling, since the texture resolution might not be high enough. I use the 8K texture, which should help. Okay. So now you'll notice that we need the snow to kind of go up into the building sides. So I'll just use the Sculpting tab for that. I'll disable the X symmetry, and I'll enable lock on the X and Y so it can only go up and down. I'll use the grab tool, and I'll hit F to increase the size of the brush. And I'll just drag up in these areas. Make it like the snow is going around the building. Now, I'm not really going to worry about that side, since I'm not going to have the camera looking over there. You can go and do on that side more if you want. I shrink the brush a little, and then try to clean this up a little. And that should be good enough for us. Okay, I'll hit Control S to save. Now we got some snow going around our building, at least where we can see it. Now let's add some to the roof. So I'll select the roof. And now tabbing to edit mode. And then I'm going to go ahead and extrude this face here with E. Assuming you have this correct face attributes option on, it'll automatically fix the UVs for you. I'll hit Control R and I'm just going to try to make some nice even squarish cuts here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want to even out it a bit. Might be a little easier in solid view without the textures. Something like that. And maybe another loop here. Cool. Back to material preview. Alright, so next we're going to want to make the material on the roof snow. So I'm going to select a few of these faces at the different angles. So those 4. And then I'm going to go to select similar, or you could use Shift G. And I'll use coplanar. Now, I guess it's not perfect, so I'll just increase the threshold just a little bit. And now if I look around, you should see that I should only be selecting the top faces. Now I'll go to the Materials tab, add a new slot, and assign snow to it, and assign that. Okay, so now I can go to UV editing, and I'm going to scale this down so I don't have as much tiling going on this roof. Something like that might be okay. Back to layout. Okay, so next we're going to want to add some more polys and then add displacement to the top. So I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier, maybe viewport levels 2. But we don't want the roof to be rounded off at the edges like this, so I'm going to go ahead and add a bevel modifier before that to basically add some control loops automatically. So I'll have to lower the amount here to about 0.01, and then maybe add another segment, and then I'll show the subdivision surface again, and that looks like it'll probably be good. Yeah, 2 segments looks good. I can hit shade smooth. Alright. Wireframe shows that we should have plenty. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and shrink these by clicking and dragging in the left side. So next we need a vertex group where we want the displacement to be. So if you accidentally unselected there, you can just use the material select on the snow area. We can use select more or less, and then less, or if you have a numpad, control numpad minus. And then we'll go to this little triangle here for our data, add a vertex group. We'll maybe double click there and rename it displacement. And we'll have maybe 0.6-ish area, and we'll assign this. And then we're going to shrink again by using control minus or the select less. Increase that all the way up to 100% and hit assign. Now if we go to our modifiers, add a displacement and set the vertex group to displacement. It should go up like that. What the hell is going on there? Oh, we need to have the bevel limit method set to angle. That should make it better. Since we did both of those, so since we did 2 levels of gradual vertex groups, it should be somewhat curved like that, which should be nice. We'll go back to material preview. Now we got snow on the roof, but we want it to be displaced in a nicer way, so we'll use low frequency. We'll decrease the mid level to 0 so that it doesn't go down at all. It like goes up. And then we'll lower the strength. We probably only need about 0.01 or something. I mean 0.1. We'll do about 0.5 maybe. Oops. Then we'll hit Shift D and duplicate that displacement with a high freq detail. And then we'll lower that some more to 0.1 or so. And now we got snow on the roof. Maybe I'll lower the displacement another level or two. That looks better. So now we got snow on the roof. All we need now is some icicles. I'll move the 3D cursor over here with Shift right click, Shift A, add a cylinder. We'll have the vertices set to 8, and then we can go and tab into edit mode and scale down. Maybe scale up a little bit on the Z axis. And then what we can do is maybe delete this face at the bottom. Hit Control left click with edge selection on to select that loop. Press F3 to search, and I'll search for grid fill. And then I can go and select that center vertice and drag it down. I'll hit Control R and add some loops here. Then I'll select this bottom vertice and hit O to turn on proportional editing. And then I'll scale down, and I'll use the scroll wheel on my mouse to adjust the radius of the proportional editing. Next, I'll add a subdivision surface modifier. I'll use just one level, as it's pretty small. I'll select all, and I'll hit F3 and search for random. And then I'll use mesh transform randomize. That might be a little bit high, so I'm going to just turn down this just a little bit. And maybe something like that might be okay. Maybe even lower. I'm going to delete the top face here. So I'll go to 3 to go to face selection, select that, and delete that face with X. Okay, so we got our first icicle. We'll hit F2 and call it icicle. Hopefully I'm not spelling it wrong, but oh well. And we'll hit M to move this to a collection. Hit enter to new collection. And then I'll call this icicles. Okay, so we want this in a new collection since we're going to be duplicating this a bunch of times. We're going to use the array modifier. And then drag this over. Actually, let's try this. I'll hit Shift D and drag on the X-axis over here. And then I'll hit Shift R and I'll hold it and I'll just duplicate this a bunch of times. Shift R does the repeat action, so it just duplicates the duplicate action with the movement a bunch of times. Okay, so now we got all of our icicles. So I'll go and select this guy and hit select objects. I'll use F3 to search for random and then transform randomize. I'll add just a little bit of transform randomize on the X and Y location, just 0.01. Then I'll drag the rotation on the Z all the way up so that I can rotate as much as possible. Then I'll add some to the scale. And now we should have a bunch of randomized icicles. Now I can hit Control J to join them into one object. We'll go ahead and add a new material. Call it ice. And save. We'll go into shading. We'll control space to bring this closer to us, and we'll increase the transmission, which is used on like glass and ice materials. We'll lower the roughness, and then we'll add a Shift A search for a bump node, which will drag the normal into here. Shift A, add noise texture, drag the factor into the height. If I hit Control Space, you should see what it looks like here. It doesn't look that great. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and select the noise texture and hit Control T with Node Wrangler enabled. Then I'll use the object, and then I can use the scale. The object generates the UVs based on object space, so they're not all in the same spot because like they were just kind of duplicated, which made them look way too repeated. So I'll just increase the scale to maybe like 5 or something, and then I'll lower the strength on the normal map quite a bit. And then maybe I'll lower the alpha somewhat, and I'll hit N and bring up the options, change the blend mode from opaque to alpha blend. This is only really for the preview in Eevee, and it'll only show up if the render engine is set to Eevee currently. We're going to render this in cycles though. Okay, so it doesn't look as nice because it's reflecting this kind of tree, this nice green tree area, so we need to use a snowy environment. So I'll go to Object and change it to World for our nodes. So if you drag around and you find the world output area with the background, so I hit Shift A, search for environment texture, open a new one, and I'm going to use the Snowy Park 01 texture from HDRI Haven. I'll drag that into a color node, and after a second this should update. We'll change this to the scene world lighting. On our material preview. And then you can see around. You can also do that in your layout tab. And then we'll save. Then I'll Shift D to duplicate this icicles. Drag this down. Tab into edit mode. Hit Z and select all this area. Then I'll zoom in a little and hit L and hold it and just do a link selection to get all of this area. And then I'll hit P to separate that by selection. Drag just this one over here. I'm missing some on this side, so I can tab into edit mode. Hold L and select a few. Oh, turn off proportional editing. I never turned that off. Shift D, drag that over. Hold L and delete these extra ones. And then it should be good. Now I can add the camera, so I can press Shift A, camera. And if I go to the menu that pops up with N, I can go to View and lock camera to view. And then if I press tilde to get the pie menu and go to view camera, or if I use the 0 numpad key, I can go to my camera view. And then I can just use my regular navigation controls to move the camera's view. So I think I'll go with something like this. But I think I might want the perspective to be a bit stronger so that I have a wider view. And to do that, I can go to the camera settings here and go to the focal length and lower it to maybe about 30 millimeters. And then I can just move my camera into view. I want to have the window in view. Now, if I hold Control middle mouse button, I can go and zoom in more gradually. So I might stop about there and call that good and save. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to see more videos like this and see the rest of the series. Thank you.